And so what you've been saying throughout this book is that if you are living your life in the horizontal, the past and the future, then you're not really living. You are making enemies of this present moment.
Yes.
And you're not truly living.
Yes.
And that when you say, what I interpret what you say, knowing yourself is to be rooted in being instead of lost in your mind, is to, in every encounter, and I've been doing this more and more, coming back to your breath.
Yes.
Coming back to the present moment in such a way that you are aware and conscious of everything that's going on around you, and recognizing that you are that awareness. That's who you are. You are the observer of all these things that are going on in the horizontal plane of your life.
Exactly. So with the vertical comes the witnessing presence, the observer.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, that's the liberation. That's sometimes this word liberation is used in spiritual context. Mm-hmm. That's the liberation from the horizontal dimension, which Jesus calls the world.
Yes. May I should just share this? I know we have Debbie from the Netherlands on Skype, but maybe this will help illustrate this for you. A couple of years ago, I wrote this in my magazine for one of the What I Know for Sure's. I was walking with my friend Bob Green on New Year's Day 2 years ago on a mountain in Hawaii, and it was late evening. The sun had set while we were walking, and the moon had come up. And the clouds had come in and come down to the ground where we were. And all of a sudden we're walking and we were surrounded by the clouds. We were in the clouds on this mountain. And you could only see a sliver of the moon up ahead, just a sliver of it. And I think Bob made a comment like, it looks like the DreamWorks logo, the moon. It looks like you can go and sit up there with the fishing pole. And we were walking along, and all of a sudden he turned around and he said, "Can you hear that?" And I stopped. And it was completely, utterly still. It was so still, it makes me want to weep thinking about it. It was so still that it felt like all of time and no time. It felt like the earth had stopped, that everything had stopped. So much so that my very breath was so loud, I began to hold my breath because my breath was making too much noise in the stillness. And in that moment, I understood what you had written in Stillness Speaks, that is always there. That stillness, there's not a bird or a cricket or a frog or a car horn or anything. That is always there.
Yes, and that's also an inner dimension.
And that is the same as I. Yes. I am that.
Yes.
I am that stillness.
Yes.
It was a powerful spiritual experience for me. I've never forgotten. I got chills now even thinking about it.
It's wonderful.
Because you recognize that is always there. When all the noise and the, fireworks and all the things that go on this mountain, that is always there.
Yes. Consciousness. We could call it, although labels are always limiting, but we could say that is pure consciousness. Mm-hmm. Before consciousness becomes something, before it's born into a form, it's there in its pristine, formless, timeless state.
And in all things, that's why you were asking us to look around the room, there is the stillness of all things. It's easier to determine in nature, though.
Yes.
It's harder with a table.
Yes, it's harder, and even harder with human beings, because there's so much mind there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But so nature, but even in so-called inanimate objects that you perhaps never even haven't looked at for years, they've been around you, sometimes it's wonderful to pick up an object and just be aware of its silent presence, no matter what it is. Because whatever it is, ultimately, nothing is inanimate. And physicists would agree, because if you go deep into any so-called inanimate object, you realize it's intensely alive.
It's easy to do with trees, as I said earlier.
Oh, yes.
And so the essence is, what we're trying to get here is that is who we are, that stillness.
Yes, that's the essence of our being. That's who we are at the deepest level. This is the timeless dimension within us.
And when you're saying that even when you pass on, when you transition to the formless, that stillness, that consciousness, that spirit, whatever name you choose to give it, still there.
Yes, that awareness is timeless. It's not subject to birth and death. As I have said somewhere, the opposite of the opposite of life has no opposite. Usually people think in terms of life and death.
Yes.
But really, death is the opposite of birth. It's not the opposite of life. Life in its essence has no opposite.